Welcome back to the latest edition of The Hex with Daniel Robertson, Armand Kafai, John Arnold. Week 7 of MLS is in the books. CONCACAF Champions Cup quarterfinals are about to kick off. We're going to talk about all of it, but first, give us the thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let us know in the comments what you think about what we're talking about today. Would love to hear from you. So guys, we got 6 topics. This is The Hex. MLS, as we mentioned last week, did not take a break for international play, but the Stars were back for MLS this week, as it was week 6, and lots of action. San Diego gets a big win. Minnesota, Miami stays top of the East. Our biggest winners from the weekend. John, start us off. What has your eye?
Well, you mentioned it, Daniel. For me, it's San Diego. This is an expansion team, and at some point, I guess we have to really learn how to deal with these expansion teams. MLS experts, like ourselves, thought that San Diego would be bad, and they look good. I mean, it's sort of that simple. But for me, it was a dream night for San Diego for a couple more reasons than just getting their first ever home win. First of all, it's how they played. Second of all, it's that they had Chucky Lozano missing and then back. He makes a late cameo. You know, the injury that took him out for a couple of weeks seems to be behind him. He's back on the field. And it's against the rival that we all kind of expect to be the team that is the team they love to hate, at least when they're not playing Xolos from across the line. So I think it was a really good night for San Diego. And this team, they've been built in a way where there's not that name that MLS sickos recognize other than Chucky, right? And there's not that name that casual fans recognize other than Chucky, and yet all the pieces are kind of coming together. One of the big doubts I had about this team going into the season was, what's Mike Ibarra's like as a coach? We know him a little bit better than most people because of his time in the Dallas system. I like him as a guy. I think he's a smart soccer mind, but I didn't know he was going to conduct the orchestra and have them playing a song that sounds this good, this quickly. A credit to him, to those who built the squad, and certainly to the players themselves who seem to be making their names, stating their case for being legitimate stars this year. We've seen expansion teams flare out, but it seems to me that with Chucky coming back, with other key players kind of working through injuries and that not taking them back a step, it's a positive sign, and for me, that's why they're the winner of the weekend.
John, you lived in Tijuana for a while. Obviously, you've spent a lot of time in San Diego. What does, maybe the first 2 home games, what did they play, like Columbus and St. Louis, which doesn't really get the blood pumping. What does it mean, like, culturally and in San Diego to beat LAFC? This felt like kind of the kickoff moment for the franchise in a lot of ways.
I think for good and bad, you see that San Diego LA rivalry, because we saw some bad scenes after with fans fighting. That's been a consistent in the baseball rivalries with all the California teams. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a Giants fan, I believe, who was killed in a fight because he fell the wrong way. With the Dodgers, with Dodgers fans, Dodgers and Padres fans have been mixing up the last few years. Hey, this is stupid. Stop doing this. Stop fighting. If you're listening to The Hex, that's not worth it. It's just not worth it. Your city is represented by the people on the field. That's the whole point of the sports. Then you don't have to actually physically fight. But I think there is that mentality that, hey, these are the guys we hate. I think the Padres-Dodgers rivalry has strengthened that. And of course, you can't underestimate the frustration that San Diego sports fans have losing the Chargers to the city up the interstate, the bigger city, the sexier city. And so the fact that San Diego FC gives them another thing they can compete with LA, and I think it certainly is like a big thing. Will they be more rivals with the Galaxy because they're geographically closer? Will they be more rivals with the LAFC? I think I would call LAFC, you can make a case for both, but I would call LAFC more Mexican, maybe, at least some of the supporter side. It seems like you have more Latino supporters groups, although there's LA, you're going to have Mexican people supporting both teams. You had Chicharito, you have this long Campos, like this long legacy. But I think, yes, it's absolutely a critical rivalry. And going forward, I think that, that's going to be one that you circle against LAFC. The fact that they get it off to a winning start keeps the good vibes going. And look, like, my wife is from Tijuana, and she was watching the end with me, and she's like, man, like, there's a lot of people there for this game, and the stadium's big. And I'm like, yeah, but like, I think people are really starting to understand, and that success at first, I think, is critical, because it is a town where, hey, look, if the team's bad, you're not hurting for other entertainment options. You can go surf, you can go have great food, you can go do all sorts of other things. But sports-wise, the soccer team seems to already be making its mark culturally as well.
Real quick, John, I do want to pick your brain about one more thing culturally around. You mentioned Tijuana and like maybe hating Tijuana or hating Xolos or hating LAFC. Do you see that as potentially like a friendly rivalry with Xolos? Because there are probably a lot of people that go to both games, or is that TBD? Watch the space.
I think it's definitely TBD. I think
Yeah.
that the way that San Diego launched, they had Tijuana featured in their videos. They have intentionally built their club headquarters close enough to where they can bring in youth players from Tijuana as local players. They don't have to the FIFA rule that keeps, for instance, America from scouting Idaho or whatever until kids are 18. That doesn't apply. They can get those kids from Tijuana within FIFA regulations. So I think there will end up being some bad blood there between the clubs themselves. Xolo started to try and play nice. They wanted to have a friendly, but I think it's wait and see. I totally agree, and I think there's a lot of people who are going to be fans of both teams, but I do wonder if, and look, like, quite frankly, San Diego, man, politically is not as kind of blue as other California cities. So, I mean, with the way that tensions are being stoked now, that people talk about immigration on that side of the aisle, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some stuff there too. Not everyone, obviously, but I think it's definitely TBD as far as how that rivalry shakes out in Leagues Cup, maybe in CONCACAF Champions Cup one day. Heck, San Diego's playing well enough. Tijuana is not. So we'll see.
Hey, they gotta win this week, and we'll talk about that later. But Armand, we could talk about the San Diego. I'm sure we'll talk about it again soon. So many layers there. But Armand, who's your biggest winner of the weekend?
For me, it's pretty straightforward. It's Atlanta United. I mean, it's a team that's absolutely struggled to start the year. You spend $50 million on their roster like they have right now to get the results that they had prior to their comeback win over NYCFC. It's really frustrating for Ronnie Dyla and co. They couldn't really figure out to work at first, trying to figure out how Almiron, Miranchuk would work, creating those opportunities, etc. And it seemed like they kind of figured out a small something against NYCFC. To get that result, to get Almiron on the score sheet, I think is absolutely massive for him. It's his first time scoring since he left Atlanta. I think all those combined are super big. And again, part of the reason why I think they're the big winner is because look at their schedule, who they're facing in the next two matches. They play at home in the next two matches against FC Dallas, who I think we all have our eyes on them. We were kind of seeing that it's a team has played some weaker opponents, and that's why their standing is so high. All due respect to them. Hopefully they can prove us wrong, but that's what I see from watching them. And the Revolution, who are terrible. So those are two, I think, bounce back games for them that they could bounce back to, and then they go play Philadelphia in Philadelphia.
They treaded water.
There's a lot of chances.
They were able to tread water in those early games.
Look, like some teams in MLS have opportunities to kind of get their rosters gelling together, right? Like we talk about Dallas, but Dallas has had kind of an easier schedule. They can kind of go through their hiccups and gel their roster. Atlanta hasn't really had that easy of a schedule, and if you and to have these next two games coming up to kind of build some momentum going into those games. I mean, their expected goals are fine. There's leaky in the back. Maybe these next few games give them the confidence. Next couple of games give them the confidence. Say, hey, we're fine. Get the locker room back together. Get cooler heads, and then go into a potentially big game against the Union in a couple of weeks if things all go along the way they're planned. But I mean, for me, Atlanta just getting that result was huge. It was looking pretty bleak. They're down 3-1 at one point. To come back to make it to win 4-3 is very, very impressive. So. Kudos to them. Hopefully they can kind of figure it out. That or Almiron Miranchuk experiment is
to figure out at the back.
So interesting.
I feel like they still just need to figure out a little bit at the back.
Yep. The back is messy.
Yeah, because individually I do think that like Almiron in rhythm and Latte Lath look great. So if those two guys, in a way, I think those guys can carry even like, oh, the chemistry is a little weird or Miranchuk, what is he a bust or whatever. Like to me, you can kind of paper over that. You can't paper over, oops, we gave up 3 goals again this week.
Yeah, ugly goals too, a couple of them. But a team that's not giving up goals and a team that is scoring a lot of goals. My big winner of the week is going to be Minnesota United, guys. They are making headlines right now, and they're undefeated in their last 5 matches. Their expected goal difference is the best in MLS by over a goal. Their expected goal difference, which to me is like the number one indicator a lot of times. The But here's the fascinating part, right? So they beat RSL last week. They haven't lost in 5 matches. Look at how they're playing. They are by far the lowest team in MLS in possession. They're keeping 35% possession so far this season, 7% lower than any other team in the league, and almost 10% lower than any team in the league. And it's like, the way that they're playing, you very rarely see such a clear identity from one team and how they're playing. I think of like the Red Bulls and their pressing in the past, something like that. But what Minnesota is doing right now is crazy. They have the fewest touches in MLS. They have the fewest passes completed by almost 20% of the next lowest team. They're not touching the ball, but they're saying when you turn it over to us, we're going to get it to Tani, we're going to get it to Yeboah, and we're going to score. And that's what they've been doing. And to me, it's just totally fascinating. And then this weekend, they're going to play NYCFC at Yankee Stadium, like the number 1 stadium to be able to turn the ball over and literally with one pass get it beyond the back line. And I don't know how long Eric Ramsey is going to be able to stay in MLS, or how long I guess Minnesota United is going to be able to hold on to this guy, right?
Well, I mean, I think you talk about like, oh, there's a defined style, and there is. And not only that, but it's a style that I would say is out of vogue. Like most managers come in and they say, we want to play with the ball. We want to play sexy football. We want our fans, blah, 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 blah. And I think, like that's kind of how I like to watch the game, right? Like I'm not faulting any managers who say that. But we've always said fans really care about you getting 3 points. And right now it's working. So why not do exactly what they're doing? Play to what it looks like are their strengths, have that style established. And I think we're still early. It's still, sample size is still a thing. Armand is mentioning like, hey, some teams are gelling, some teams are not. Like I interviewed Evander last week, 2 weeks ago, and I was like, hey, like, what do you like about Cincinnati? He's like, I don't know, dude. Like, I don't know. I haven't been there. Like, I really haven't. He's like, I've been with CONCACAF Champions Cup with the games. Like, I don't know. And I think like guys are going to settle in, relationships are going to form. But if Minnesota United sticks to their principles, you can see them still having success.
Have you seen anything like this, Armand?
Yeah, I mean, we have, right? With Red Bulls, with Jesse Marsch, they had a really clear, defined style. They were high pressing, etc. And that's the whole thing. It's kind of like the misconception you hear often when you hear commentators talk about, oh, they're giving up the ball. They don't have possession. Well, there's a clear intention of why they don't have possession. They're clearly setting you up to kind of smash you on the counter and go from there. And I think it's a pretty viable strategy in MLS where we see defensive mistakes happen almost every week. Like just errors that happen quite a bit. I mean, that Atlanta NYCFC game, I mean, the game-winning goal was on an error, an error that Latte Loss was able to capitalize on. I think one trend that we're seeing with some teams that are successful early on, and was really add this to the words of wisdom, as Charles Leclerc once said, is they have a clear, defined identity in what they want to play and how they want to play. Tyler Heaps in San Diego said, hey, we want to play like Columbus Crew. We want to play like this. Guess what? They look pretty damn near like the Columbus Crew. Minnesota United has a clear identity through Eric Ramsey that we saw last season, and they built on it this year. Those teams that come with a clear, idea from the technical staff, from the front office, all the way down, those are the teams that are going to have the immediate success, and that's what we're seeing right now with both San Diego and Minnesota United.
Guys, let's go back to August 4th, 2009. Okay? The number 1 song on the radio, I Got a Feeling, by the Black Eyed Peas. And Peter Vermes was named the interim manager of Sporting Kansas City.
Wow.
Fast forward today, I'm not sure.
Also my brother's birthday.
Also your brother's like literally the day of his birth?
No, he's not that young.
No.
He wishes.
He could be. I mean, that was a long time ago.
I suppose. Yes, my son was born a year later, but yes.
There you go. But Peter Vermes was named the interim manager, and today is the first time since that day that he is not the manager of Sporting Kansas City anymore. He's won 3 Open Cups, MLS Cup, had one of the best teams in the league for a decade. But Armand, was it pretty much time to make this move?
It was time to make this move 1 or 2 years ago, man.
Yeah.
The way that they've been playing has been very just kind of old MLS. And sure, you could point to, they beat St. Louis SC, the fakest number 1 seed in probably MLS up there in MLS history. You just had to get that out again in that 2-game series. But look, I had to. But look, when you look at SKC, they've done so much good things, right? But at some point, you have to kind of pass the baton somewhere else and move forward with the league is changing. You talk about 2009. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I've seen this a lot on social media. They were still the Wizards at the time, right?
Yeah.
Like that is an entirety ago. We've seen MLS go through evolution after evolution after evolution throughout the time, through styles of play, through players coming in, etc. And for me, like just looking at what SKC has been doing over the last few years, their advanced metrics have stayed flat or have gone down. You've kind of lost the excitement when you see them play, and there just needs to be fresh new blood coming in there. And I think they try to do that when they hired, I think it's Brian Burns, but that's also an old head in MLS. Like
the thing that's kind of the thing, right? Is that Vermes had kind of absolute total control, which he actually deserved. I think we need to put some respect on Peter Vermes' name. Some people I think have done a good job today in their reactions. I saw Matt Doyle praise him, Charlie, like Weeby, of course, with a personal connection, I know. But like this is a guy who won trophies, and I think that notably, when the Kansas City franchise was the Wizards, I like their jerseys better. I think they had a cooler name, but like they were not as successful after a little bit of early success. I think that like Vermes in a lot of ways reminds me of Tuca Ferretti with Tigres. He was there forever, and his identity was the club's identity, and his fingerprints were all over. And there were some pains after he left, and now you see Tigres, although not this weekend, like kind of reestablishing themselves as a top club with modern ideas, with fresh faces that still kind of pay tribute to the club. In this case, like Guido Pizarro is a manager and now is a former player. I don't know if that's the route that Kansas City has to go, but I do think it's going to be a challenge to kind of un-Vermes your club. And I do think they probably should have started that process earlier. Last week, you guys were saying, oh, what's Montreal doing firing a manager so early? Like, really, the at FC Dallas was the game that, like, killed the Vermes era. I think it was more likely that the fan statement saying, we are not asking, we are demanding that Vermes go, in their own respectful statement saying, hey, Vermes has won us trophies. We respect what he's done. We like the man. But this isn't it anymore, and I think everyone can kind of come to that conclusion. Probably Vermes himself. He's not a foolish guy either. And look, he's not an old man. I don't think we've seen the last of him, and I do think you can teach kind of an old dog new tricks. I wonder where he pops up again, but I think it's worth sort of applauding the success, remembering the moments. I saw Alex Abnos from The Guardian say, hey, build the statue. Probably. Once the time passes, yeah, probably. Like, who else brought more, maybe like Preki? Like, who else brought more great moments to Kansas City's pro soccer? It's really difficult to think of any names. So, past due, overdue, necessary, but also, man, what a run. And a run they're going to have to sort of figure out how to pull out of, because he was so in control for so long.
It's time to look forward, guys. CONCACAF Champions Cup quarterfinals start tomorrow. We've got 4 matches, 3 involving MLS teams, and how we wanted to preview this is each of us kind of takes one of those matchups and gives a question that we're looking at heading into them. Of course, there are 2 legs, so this will happen over the next couple weeks, and we're going to start off with Miami playing LAFC. The first leg is going to be at BMO Stadium on Tuesday. Now, I did see that. Is it true the game is kicking off at 10:30 Central Time? I wasn't sure if I had my time zone.
I saw it on FOTMob at 10:30.
Yeah, it's a super late kickoff, so we're gonna be.
I zoned out. Where is it?
it's at BMO Stadium in LA on Saturday.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought it's not on Saturday.
Now we're all over the place. On Tuesday.
I thought so. You remember that Mexico doesn't do daylight saving, so Mexico City is 1 hour behind. So a lot of the games are kicking off later. This one clearly not in Mexico.
The 11:30 kickoff in Miami, but Armand, this is a potential MLS Cup preview, depending on how the teams go, obviously potential. What is the question you're looking into for this matchup?
Well, we know what we can get from Miami, right? Like, I think we know what we've seen, we know what we can get, and they've been getting the results, without Messi, especially in MLS play, without Messi starting in MLS play, and without Messi in general. My question is more on LAFC. They've really struggled to create in quite a bit of moments compared to the levels that we anticipated them creating in. Like, their expected goals are lower. They had a big game against San Diego, so there might be a bit of a bounce back there. But can they create against a team? Like, I guess my question is, can LAFC find their offensive spark again? Because it seems like it's been missing. And it seems like it's been missing across the season. If you look at their last 4 or 5 games, you see L's all across for LAFC. It is not exactly the greatest of starts. And when they start Olivier Giroud up top, it seems like the offense is pretty stagnant in moments, even when they have a guy like Denny Bouanga out wide or Under on the other side. Miami likes to dictate games with their out of, like, kind of how they play out of possession. Their shape in defense is very structured without Messi. Without Messi, it's been very structured. With Messi, it kind of goes a little bit wild, but you're going to take that trade-off any day of the week to have the freaking best player in the world on the pitch. I wonder how LAFC will set up to exploit that. Will they go to their more counter-attacking routes and go through Boanga, go through these guys? I don't think so, but it'll be definitely interesting to see how they set up against this Miami team who I think they should have Messi. I mean, Messi did make a 30-minute cameo against, I'm saying starting-wise, though.
Yeah, sure.
I'm assuming he's going to start. So there might be some opportunity there. But guys, like, LAFC is just not the LAFC we've been seeing of old.
Yeah, but I mean, you mentioned creating goals, though. LAFC has fewer expected goals than RSL, Seattle, Austin. That's crazy that they haven't been able to create at all.
You're naming Champions Cup teams, though.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
No, I do think that there are understandably questions there, but I think there's a breakout game coming. I'm not saying it's against Inter Miami. I just think that like the roster is quite good. Martinez is good. I think Under is good. Like there are signings here that's going to make it happen, but the Giroud thing is a big miss in my book, right? Like this is a big problem that you had this guy that you thought was going to be a huge contributor, and it just hasn't really happened. And that's one where I don't know that a breakout's coming. So I think that's the right question, Armand, is that can LAFC's attack resemble what it used to?
Yeah. And one thing I want to add, sorry, dear, I totally cut you off, but Messi kind of brings out the best in everybody. Everyone wants to show out against Messi. Is this the kind of game that allows LAFC to? That's not an analytic. You
got Alan Velasco to Boca Juniors.
Yeah, Alan Velasco's $13 million transfer fee is fully funded by that one game.
No, and the thing that everyone isn't taking into account, this is the first time that LAFC. Okay, so they've left the Eastern time zone once this year in MLS play. They played that game at Houston. Yes, they destroyed Houston. They haven't had a road trip like this yet. And I'm not sure the Jamaica to Miami flight. I don't think that's even too terribly long of a flight. So you're looking at the first cross-country trip that they have taken the entire season, and they've had a pretty easy schedule overall. Remember, they didn't have to play an international break. They were the only team that didn't play last weekend. So I think you're right, John. I think this could be the game that LAFC breaks out and says, okay, F all this. It's time to get back to our roots, because we saw also when they went down 3-0 against San Diego last weekend, they came back and they made it 3-2. And Boanga had a chance when they were down a man to make it 3-3 with about 5 minutes left. That is a chance he typically finishes. And if they finish that chance, we're going into Tuesday on a completely different mindset. I'm with you. I'm going to take LAFC to upset Miami in this series. John, who are you taking?
I think it's still Miami. I think Miami has more talent than just Messi, like we're always talking about. It feels like we just have the same talking points for this team, but they kind of keep playing the same exact games. So I think Miami goes through.
Armand?
I think Miami goes through. But I think the first leg will be a draw, and they'll win the second leg at home.
By the way, we mentioned in the last segment, the Miami-LA game is on Wednesday night, so let's just get our story straight there real quick. That's on
Check your calendars.
Check the local listings. Check your local listings, actually. I love that. Love that one. But, John, the second game we're going to look at this week is a really intriguing one between Vancouver and Pumas. Vancouver is going to host the first leg on Wednesday at BC Place, 8:30 Central Time there. What's your big question heading into this one?
Oh, my big question is simple. How much is Efrain Juarez out for blood? Revenge spot. Former player, former, this guy knows the Whitecaps. Is he a Whitecaps legend? No, but like he is a hot coach in Mexico. He's had a decent start. They had a really good game actually against Leon on Sunday. I think the team is still adapting to what he wants. He's still adapting to what the team is, the players that he has. But Juarez, young Mexican coach, actually worked with Ronnie Dyla. That's kind of where he got his quote-unquote education after being a very successful, very famous player. Now he is coaching, but he coached in Colombia, won the league, won the cup, and said, I'm out. And he was the hottest coach on the Mexican market for a long time. So I'm joking a little bit about his familiarity with Vancouver, but some of the coaches that are in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, I do think don't do their homework. in the early rounds. Once you get to the quarterfinals, I think everyone's kind of mostly taking it seriously. But I think what Juarez does and how he sets up his team is going to be the most interesting thing. Vancouver, when they have personnel healthy, we kind of know what they want to do now. We're starting to understand their idea. We've seen a lot of them, but we've had more games actually of Vancouver to look at a sample size than we've had of Pumas under Efrain Juarez. They've had some highs, they've had some lows, but again, it's just really early in his tenure. And I think how he sets up his team, the decisions he makes about first leg, second leg, all those types of things are going to be the most fascinating to me when we look at this series.
Well, to me, this feels like the one Liga MX team remaining that's, I don't want to say like fraud, but you've got three really elite teams, three of the top five in the standings, and then you've got Pumas, right?
They're definitely not the form team, although, again, I think that could be changing. We saw them with an impressive performance in Juarez's debut in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. That came against future Club World Cup contender Alajuelense. But we also saw them play a pretty good game against León this weekend, a León team that was fired up because they are no longer future Club World Cup competitor. It was a really emotionally charged atmosphere Sunday night in the Camp Nou. They scored in the second minute, and yet Pumas were still able to sort of hit the brakes and slow the game down enough to where they were able to get it level at halftime and then win the game late. So I think that shows Juarez's fingerprints already starting to have that emotional maturity to manage those matches in those difficult situations. It's not easy to go to Canada and even like, I hope it's full. I hope it's totally full. But like, I think it's a bit of a curveball when these guys are used to playing in generally really good atmospheres. Yeah. And like the Whitecaps fans sometimes has been like, oh, it's the same night as a big Canucks game or whatever. But like they just haven't really shown up so far this season. So sometimes that can be even more difficult, I think, for players to play in. So if they have the emotional maturity, I think they might be able to get out of the series. And in fact, I'm going to pick Pumas to advance. And I don't think I would have done that 10 days ago. But I think that Juarez factor and the kind of talent sort of starting to reemerge under him is why Pumas for me are going to get through the series.
John, also one thing you mentioned when you mentioned the atmosphere, it's also on turf. The fact that Vancouver plays on turf is a very big thing, and a lot of people do not like Vancouver's turf. So that's a very big aspect of the home field advantage they'll have. Because I bet you, I mean, Daniel, you said it was probably, 6:30 local or something like that?
Yep, 6:30
that's
local.
I don't have a feeling it'll be that.
The crowd will
not be great. And I
remember one time they had to move for the Home and Garden show. Usually teams have to move for concerts or like monster truck rallies, and you're like, oh, sure. But one time it was like nice patio furniture and plants.
Yeah, exactly. And I like what Vancouver has been doing, and they had an interesting result against Toronto. I feel like they should have done better against probably one of the... But Toronto has been looking a little bit better with a little bit of the changes that they've been making. But I 100% agree. I mean, we kind of know what to expect from Vancouver from what we've seen in the first, 6, 7, 8 games. But when it comes to Pumas, we're still learning about what Efrain Juarez wants to put, what fingerprints he wants to put actually on the team. So, I mean, I think Vancouver will have to win big in this game, because if they don't win big in this game, I think they're in big trouble going into that second leg.
I think you guys are discounting a little bit the Vancouver offense, though, and how many pieces they have. You got to remember, they put 3 past Monterrey, and that's not an easy thing to do. They scored goals as well, and they're going to be out in this first leg. They have to win by 2 goals. If they don't win the first leg by 2 goals, I don't think they have a chance going back to our beloved Pumas Stadium, where we had one of our greatest nights of
Daniel's worst night of his life.
The worst night of my life, when we got caught up in a rainstorm at a Pumas game. But no, that'll be an interesting one.
We didn't make a prediction.
Hold on, you don't have to make a pick. This is bullshit.
I didn't make a prediction.
Yeah, sure. My prediction is it will be interesting. The fans will have fun.
Pumas, it's got to be Pumas. You can't look. I didn't like what I saw from Vancouver this last week. I think they're losing a little bit of momentum. I think the international break killed them. It was a shame, because they had that game against Chicago where they got beat, and then this last week and they go to Toronto. They should have scored some goals, and it looks like they're starting. I don't want to get found out, but they're just losing some momentum. So I got to go with Pumas.
I think Vancouver over 2 legs.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, the third matchup that we are looking at is Tigres against the LA Galaxy, the reigning MLS champs, who have not won a game yet in the season. And guys, for me, the biggest question mark is not whether Tigres wins or not, but I think it's just which Tigres is going to show up, because this series is in their hands. They decide who takes this, because if the good Tigres shows up, they're going to wipe the floor with the Galaxy. But is this going to be the Tigres that played the last 30 minutes against Cincinnati, where they ran them off the pitch and probably were as high of a level as we've seen in CONCACAF outside of Club America? Or is this going to be the team that went basically 150 minutes through the first two legs sleepwalking and then decided, oh, we need to turn on the accelerator? Because remember, the Galaxy, they have got Joseph Paintsel. He came back and he played 30 minutes against Orlando City. He's getting healthier. That's my second question is, what are we going to see out of Paintsel? Could he play 60 minutes? I don't know how healthy he is, but you certainly don't want to leave this to the second leg because, as we saw, they can sleepwalk a little bit. And if you look at their results this year, it seems like they either win 2 or 3-0 or they lose 1-0. They either play really well or they get shut out, right? So which Tigres is going to show up? I think it will be a very good Tigres. I think they will go out and beat the Galaxy by 3 goals this week. But let's see. I mean, the Galaxy have allowed multiple goals in 5 out of their 6 MLS games, and they have the most expected goals allowed in MLS. How can they keep this Tigres team off the board?
Well, the thing is that this Tigres team is not going to have Andre Pierre-Gignac, and you'd say, well, they've been planning for this for a while. They tried to buy the Galaxy's forward, but they still haven't really replaced him. Nico Ibanez is leading the line, but they did nothing at the Azteca, at the Ciudad de los Deportes. I just don't know exactly where that pop is coming from. Sometimes it shows up, I agree, and sometimes you have a great day from Marcelo Flores or Diego Lainez or Juan Brunetta for sure. He's been the most consistent for sure. But some days you have what happened in Mexico City, and they just don't look like they're up for it. Now, then they can still go and bring in former Galaxy attacker Uriel Antuna, right? Like, they still have a deep team. It's still a better team than I think most MLS squads on paper, but I think, I may be over-indexing on manager questioning, but Guido Pizarro, this is the first challenge of his career because he's coming off a bad loss, and now everyone expects them to roll through this series against an MLS team that, they're the reigning champions, but they're not playing well. But this is the first time he's faced adversity as a manager. Remember, at this time last month, he was still a player on the team. So it's just an interesting, and maybe it was a month and a half, but it's just an interesting little wrinkle there because he does need a response from his squad.
And when you look at the Galaxy, they've looked rough. Like, rough might be an understatement to how they've looked.
But they don't look composed. That's the problem. You can have bad results and look composed. They don't look composed.
And they've also they're not used to this string of bad results under this, like, with these current players. They also don't have depth. They're basically, to get cap compliant, they cut all their depth. So their team is either like Edwin Cerrillo or some 16-year-old player that are trying to bring up through the system. Like, there's no in-between depth. Well, and sure, if you have Paintsel back, are you going to throw Paintsel into that environment immediately after playing?
I mean, you kind of have to if he's healthy, though. You have no choice.
I don't anticipate him starting after a hamstring injury.
No.
I think maybe in the second 30 minutes to go. Like, with 30 minutes to go to kind of bring a change of pace, but you have to be careful with hamstring injuries because those are a lot of the ones that you can get re-injured on quite a bit if you rush them back too quickly. Without Paintsel starting the game, I bet you they're going to be trying to fight for survival until Paintsel can come on late during the match. That's not a topic of what we're talking about, but this will, I think, destroy their MLS thing throughout the week because, their depth is nothing. They're going to be starting, Lepley and their right back Miller, I think it was. Yeah, that's gonna be rough.
And remember, we also talked about how there might not be much of a home advantage for Vancouver playing at 6:30 p.m. The Libres y Locos are going to roll deep to Dignity Health Sporting Park, and you may get 15,000 Tigres fans.
Well, I don't know if it'll be quite that decided, but you guys were speaking about, if Vancouver doesn't win the first leg big. Hey, Vancouver went down to Mexico and got a result. The Galaxy haven't been tested in that way yet, having the first series that they played in this competition going down to Herediano, which isn't playing in their own stadium. So it's just there's a lot of variables that the Galaxy don't really have going in their favor. And one of the most important variables is how good their squad has been this year, which is not very good. I'm taking Tigres, even though I've got my doubts.
Tigres, no question about it.
No question. I'm not even thinking about it.
It could be 5-1.
10.
John, we are staying in Mexico for our last segment of the Hex this week. Yes, and it was a mini Liguilla. We've got about 4 matches left in the season, and it was a mini Liguilla this weekend with all of the top teams just about playing each other. Club America, as we just mentioned, boy, they put a beating on Tigres. Cruz Azul, a shutout win at Chivas. Pumas with the win at León, and then A 16-year-old wins it at Monterrey for Tijuana. Who made the biggest statement this weekend?
To me, it's America. It's boring, but this is a team that won the title last tournament, kind of sleepwalking through the entire season. They had injuries, they had players missing, and then they won in the playoffs. But now they're right back on their perch. And this, to me, was the game where it was like kind of a prove-it situation. America was sitting in number 1, but Tigres are sitting at number 3. These, as you mentioned, are the types of games you're going to be playing in the Liguilla. We expect these teams to make a deep run. It actually wasn't as ugly as the scoreline indicates, but there was never really any sweat on America. They were never worried about losing this game, and they win 3-0. So I think that America is just rolling along. The rumors are they might be in the Club World Cup. They'd definitely be Mexico's best chance. They're the back-to-back-to-back champions, and it looks like they're absolutely going to contend for a 4th. One thing that's a little interesting, guys, and this is taking us off the Liga MX North America track, but Andre Jardine is the manager of America. Botafogo called him up. A couple other teams have been kind of sniffing around. You know what job came open this week?
Sporting Kansas City?
Sporting. Now that would be a hire. The Brazil senior men's national team job, right?
Wow.
Now, he was asked about it. He said, no. They want someone more important. I don't know who's more important, right? I mean, like, I don't. Look.
Ancelotti?
But Ancelotti, does he look? It's one thing to leave America, which is the biggest club in the Americas right now. I'll say it.
Yeah.
It's another thing to leave Real Madrid, where he's already been told to leave Real Madrid and doesn't want to do it. So I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. He's also a guy who has experience in the Brazil system with the Olympic team. So that's one thing that could derail a title chase. It's not going to derail anything that happened in the past. They had the best weekend for me.
Well, and I was going to ask you. You kind of already said it, but at this point, having watched obviously football in North America for decades now, I'm not sure we've seen a team at about this level of Club America that we see right now, where I don't think it's at all hyperbole to say they're the best team, maybe the best club team in the world outside of Europe.
Yeah, you can definitely make an argument, right? And I think the interesting thing as well is that when we've talked about kind of super teams from Mexico or even some of the best MLS teams, usually there's one or two big names or a star player that's just doing something different. Sure, America has their stars, but like this weekend's a great example. Like Brian Rodriguez scores 2 goals. Victor Davila, who they brought back from Russia after he had played in Liga MX, scores the 3rd. Ramon Juarez, who doesn't seem to be able to crack the Mexico national team as a player who's consistently one of their most important defenders. You just have all these guys kind of playing their part, fitting into this puzzle that Jardine is putting together. And I just think it's really impressive. Maybe their star is Fidalgo, the midfielder who kind of does it all. He protects the defense. He gets forward and starts moves. I think he assisted one of the goals this weekend. He is a star, but he's not a star in the same way that a Gignac or, it's not a huge name. But they've really, really been impressive. And I think it's even more impressive to me that it's not built around one or two guys. It really is a team strength.
Yeah, and we already talked about CONCACAF Champions Cup, but it does feel like, though, that Cruz Azul may be just about the only team that could give them a match right now. It's not going to be easy for America. Tell me real quick, a 16-year-old scoring for Tijuana. Is this a guy people know? Is he a hot prospect?
Yeah, he should be old news at this point. Gilberto Mora has already been with the senior national team, youth national teams as well. I think he went in with the U20 camp for the Nations League or U23, whatever the practice games they were playing was. But he's definitely on the radar of clubs in the Netherlands and clubs in other parts of Europe. There was a PSV specifically asked for him to come train. I don't remember exactly even what happened with that, but this is a guy who's been in the first team for 2 semesters now. It seems like a top prospect and definitely looks the part when he does something like score a winning goal against Monterrey. It's actually his second, if I'm not mistaken, in Liga MX. This first came many, many months ago while he was still 15. So, he's doing it, and it's weird. Xolos, I said, hey, always watch Xolos because their defense is terrible. But this weekend, a 2-1, and the only goal they had against them was a penalty. So maybe all they needed to do was kick Juan Carlos Osorio out to fix the defense, but it's let guys like Mora shine. And I think also worth noting that on the other side is Efrain Alvarez, who's getting Mexico senior call-ups as well, and is a guy who could make a late push to the Mexico World Cup roster as well. So look, this team has some sauce. They have some exciting prospects. They usually give up a lot of goals. It's they're not going to make the playoffs. They're not going to make the playoffs, but it's fun.
I got educated on the last weekend of Liga MX by subscribing to the Get CONCACAF newsletter. There was a great one that went out today. So definitely subscribe to that if you haven't, and you can get caught up on everything. We could talk about it for the next half hour. But that is going to wrap us up this week for the Hex. We will be back next week to discuss everything that happened in the first leg of CONCACAF Champions Cup and plenty more. So thanks for listening. Give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you next week.